Hi, and welcome to Yeshivat Shem Ve'aver. I am Rabbi David Katz, and this is Ger number 15 in the ongoing Ger series. Questions, comments, or feedback, I can always be reached at Rabbi Katz at virtualyeshiva.com. The topic or theme, I guess if I have to give it an official, non-generic Ger 15 topic, or title, the basis of the class entirely is, let's just call it, the ultimate review of everything we've done, and I mean that in the most grandiose sense, and filtered through Tehillim, Psalms 119, verse number 19. I'll go ahead and read in Hebrew. Ger anochi ba'aretz, al taster mimeni mitzvosecha. I am a ger in the land, says David. Don't conceal from me your commandments. So, for recording's sake, I guess we'll call the class David the Ger. What? You know what? This is fitting. This is really fitting. Joe, if you remember, we were gonna. I don't know how many times in Tehillim David says he's a Ger, but class number 7 was about David the Ger, and we didn't give it because it was a holiday season. And I chose to give an introduction to the concept of David the Ger. I forget which verse it is. I can bring it in the footnotes when the class is posted, about David the Ger. So how ironic is it that now we're doing another one with David the Ger. It came up because Chaim Chlorfine, author of The Path to the Righteous Gentile, my learning partner in these matters, found this verse today in Tehillim. And we worked it out and went over it and hashed it out inside out and backwards. So Ger number 15 is, just for recording's sake, is synonymous. We're going to go ahead and make it synonymous with Ger number 7. So for those following at home, and for the record being, Ger 15 is basically synonymous with Ger number 7. When you iron out the verse, David calls himself a Ger. What does that mean? That's the first stanza. In the land, what does that mean? Don't hide from me your commandments, or the connotation, your commandment, singular, with a connotation of magnitude as opposed to multitude through the means of remez. This pasuk or verse, very small, yet it really has the ability to contain the entire Ger message until now. It's like the more you weigh into the verse, the more it contains. There's a Talmudic passage. It says, the traits of Hashem are not like the traits of man. The traits of God are that kli mala maksik, kli eino mala eino maksik. A full vessel contains, an empty vessel does not contain. The way it works out, when you go to a Torah class, right? And I ask you, I say, everybody open up your Tehillim to 119:19. Read the verse in English. Everybody on common ground says, I am a sojourner in the land. Don't hide from me your commandments. And I say, does everybody understand this verse? And I assume everybody here would answer yes. Can that be confirmed? So you're all confirming. Yet, isn't it a little bit brazen to say you actually understand this verse? Have any of you actually looked up in the Hebrew and mapped out the extensions and depth of this verse? Has anybody? I don't think anybody's done that. So how can you say that you know the verse? But that's the beauty of Torah. You come to class, and for all intents and purposes, you know the verse. You know the verse. Okay, Rabbi, we're good. I understand. I'm a stranger in the land. Maybe it's a Ger Toshav even. I know a little bit. The land, maybe, connotation of the world, Israel. I'm good to go. Rabbi says, bravo. Now that you're locked and loaded, now that you're really aware, you know it. Let's call it for what it is. You know it. And then I go into the commentary. Ger Nachiva Arts Al Tastir Mimeni Mitzvah. Just repeats the verse in the Hebrew. It says, and since that I am just like the Ger in the land, that is to say that my soul on the pure godly intellectual level is not as a dweller in this world of physicality. Because it comes from another world. And it's like a Ger among the powers of, let's call it gross physicality, that they are dwellers in this world whose nature is to come upon, infiltrate the seichel, the sublime part of the mind. And my soul doesn't have the power to grasp matters of God. Now, I say this with a grain of salt. Matters of God as opposed to God. It's like, I'll give you a perfect analogy. Einstein had problems with arithmetic, but he was very proficient in nuclear physics. Do you hear the analogy? Right? It's always the classic thing. Arithmetic will kill you, and if you're gifted and that's your field, you're proficient in rocket scientry. Now, what's the irony? When you're in third grade, they tell you if you don't know arithmetic, you're not going to amount to anything. And to be a rocket scientist, you have to be really, really good at arithmetic. And then the kid gets psyched out, and now he's 25, and he never got to become a rocket scientist. Instead, he's glorifying, man, this is awesome. 5 plus 5 equals 10. And he's loving it. He's saying, man, this is the best. This is the best. They were so right. 6 plus 6 equals 12. And one day, when I get to count really high, I'm going to be able to count like 5 trillion plus 5 trillion is 10 trillion. And one day I'll move to even subtraction. And maybe if I'm lucky, multiplication. And then only the really gifted ones to division. This is an analogy of religion in the poorest sense. They tell you it's about arithmetic, when really you should be teaching rocket science to the kids. Right? Rocket science is actually, in Torah religion terms, is easier to understand than making unnecessary labor that serves as nothing but a division. It's like, let's talk about God rather than directly about God. Or let's say everything God isn't instead of what God is. But that's already going into the negative, which already has positive qualities. It's the preparation that keeps you from ever actually doing anything. You're 50 years old and you're still doing arithmetic. Not because you're incompetent, but because they tell you, hey, we can only do arithmetic. So that's what David means when he says, my soul doesn't have the power to grab matters of the godly. Do you hear what I'm saying by godly? It's like the constant preparation. One day. And you never get to that day. So David says, I don't have power to do that. I don't find it entertaining to count to 1 trillion and then multiply it by trillions. I want rocket science. I have the ability to do rocket science. Because the only thing holding me back from getting to God is this world of physicality that serves as a barrier between me and God, or between this world and God. Meaning, King David's ready to go, but everyone says you can't get to God unless you master arithmetic. And King David says, why can't we just X out the arithmetic and get to rocket science? I happen to be a rocket scientist. And therefore he requests, do not hide from me your commandments. That there shouldn't be retribution and payback for me wanting to simply fulfill your commandments. End of quote. Now back to our analogy. Do you understand what I just said? In the running commentary, do you understand the commentary that was just said? Please confirm. But wait, how? You just got done telling me you understood the verse completely. So how can it be you understood the verse completely? Why do you need me to give you the commentary? So that's what it means. A full vessel can retain, and an empty vessel cannot retain. So if you were to say, once you're filled, you're full, you understood, now you can build on top of what you understood. That's what happened, no? You understood the verse, we gave you the commentary, and then you said, okay, I'm seeing where this is going. Now let's try the inverse. An empty vessel doesn't retain. Now pretend that you are an empty vessel. And I say, a ger in the land, I'm a ger in the land, don't hide from me your commandments. Do you understand? And the answer is no. No, I don't. I'm an empty vessel, I want to receive. And I say, okay. So do you understand then what a ger is? And everybody says, maybe, not sure. Well, go ahead and tell me. Okay. A ger is a stranger, a sojourner. Do you understand what that means? And you say, maybe, I'm not sure. And in the end, you keep doing this little dance, and did you ever get out of the verse? Did you ever even approach the commentary? Never! That's why the divine study is a vessel that's filled can retain, an empty vessel does not retain. You already proved it. You knew the verse, and then you were able to hear the commentary. Now let's go into the secular realm and pick up our analogy of arithmetic and rocket science. So we go into and say, the traits of man are not like God. An empty vessel retains, and a full vessel cannot retain. If you know everything in the world, hypothetically, about rocket science, and then don't bring me in parallel wisdoms. You are the expert on rocket science. Is there a chance, practically, that I can tell you something you don't know? I highly doubt it. A full vessel cannot retain. Right? I highly doubt that when the rocket scientist goes to the lecture of, let's say, high school kids, they're going to say, Professor, if you look in I'm making this up, I don't know what I'm talking about, but if you look in the Delta Quadrant, Could it be that the oxygen there is more dense than in the alpha quadrant? Alright, I highly doubt you're going to give him the question from left field. He's going to say, you're right. I think we need to re-understand thermodynamics better. You brought down our entire construct of science. You are a genius, and I am nobody. Have a nice day. I don't think that happens that often. When the guy gives the lecture, he probably knows everything and wrote the book. Point being that the empty vessel is how you retain. Do you know what a rocket is? No, I don't. Ah, good question. A rocket is, with fuel and the metal. Does anyone know why we have rockets? Good question. No, actually I don't know. A rocket is, and you go on and on and on. And eventually, the more you don't know, you come out saying, hey, that was great. I learned, do you know why they have rockets? Because the space shuttle is not practical, and you'll know a lot of stuff. But the premise is you know nothing. And now let's go back to the analogy of Torah. If you approach this verse that you know nothing, we're never getting to the real matter here. And you assume and you admit you knew the verse. Because everybody here is alive and has a soul. And you are the expert of your life and your soul. Because you live it. And I don't even care if you're a technical halachic ger or not. If you ask me what ger is and I say sojourner, or if I say it in practical English, you feel like a stranger. Well, that's like every top 40 music hit in America, is it not? They're all singing about the same thing. I feel like a stranger. Nobody knows me. Nobody gets me. I'm not from around here. That's called life. The ger is everybody. What is not a ger? So now we go to the next word, I am. When you realize you're a ger, you say, I'm a ger. I don't care who you are, you're a ger. And where are you a ger? In the land. That's right. And I guarantee you, every single person, wherever you are right now, you probably have a reason to feel like you are a ger where you are. Am I wrong? Where everybody is right now, is there some semblance of ger where you are? To say ger anochi ba'aretz? Go ahead. And then you can continue with the verse. And you say, I am a ger in the land. God, don't hide from me your commandments. I mean, is there really anybody that doesn't know what this means on a personal level? If you can just be honest enough with yourself, to know yourself just that much, that really you are a ger in the land, and you're asking God, God, don't withhold from me without to serve you. I want to work with you, God. Is there anybody that cannot relate to that on some level? And I'm being the lowest common denominator here. I would say everybody's revving in high gear on this, the more you think about it. Because it's true. Once it's true, and I ask you, do you understand the verse? Is your vessel filled? You're going to say, yeah, that is me. And then we say, good. Now that it's you, let's bring in the commentary, and I'll tell you more about you. And when we're done with that, you'll say, wow, now I really feel full. I feel like I know everything. That's called being connected. That's called God in your life has been recognized. And what more can you have than God recognized in your life? You're ready to go home and say, this guy's got me thinking. I never realized how much of a ger I felt, and it was about the land, and asking God if I could serve him with more commandments. I thought 7 was enough. I thought the 2 extra ones I did was enough. Maybe I should be doing more. and then you teach on the commentary, which we're about to do, and you thought you had no capacity for more information of yourself because you're already connected. That's the gift and miracle of Torah. You're never done. But your task is to always remain filled. Because if you're not going to do that, if you're not going to be filled and internalize the Torah and relate to you as the subject, and you're always able to be the subject. That's the miracle of Torah, but particularly the Ger. Because everything and everyone is a Ger. Lowest common denominator ends up being the biggest macro of all, called the hidden light of creation. Now, in verses say, I don't know. Are you a Ger? I don't know. That means you've thought about yourself zero. You have not thought 1 second about your existence. And I have to tell you what it means to be a stranger. What it means to be in the world. If you're that base of reality, then, there is hope. But the point is, it's the wrong approach. You need to just fess up and be honest. And say, yeah, I get what you're saying on some level. How do you love the Ger? Generically. But generic is 100%. No, I don't know your whole Ger story. I wasn't with you when you traveled to Antarctica. I don't know you. But as a Ger, I can relate to you. 100%. When you speak, I know what you mean. One Ger to another. We all have that in common. Are you willing to even admit on the surface level that you understand? It's called letting your guard down. Yeah, I'm a Ger. Are you? Yeah, me too. It's just being honest. It's being honest. It's I don't feel like I'm from here. Don't know what's going on. God put me here. Admit life. Connect to reality. Then 100% do you say, yes, I am present and accounted for in the verse. My vessel's full. I'm ready to go. That's the approach you have to have with Torah. Because every word of Torah can be related to. It's when you reject God, you say, I don't know. Who are you calling a Ger? I don't know. You're the Ger, not me. That's already bigotry, hatred, not loving your brother as yourself. It's a little contest. I don't know. And why don't you tell me what a Ger is? That's the empty vessel. That's the world where there is no God. So then you get real, and macho in the intellect. Well, I'll tell you what a Ger is. Definition of a Ger is a sojourner. You know what a sojourner is? And that's the world. And what is the lowest common denominator of the Ger? In the negative, you shall have no other gods. Meaning, I recognize, Anachi Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem, your God. Once you admit that, and you're willing to open the Torah as an adherent to a potential Ger Toshav, and then I say, do you know what it means, Ger Nachi V'Aretz? I'm a Ger in the land? You're going to say yes every time. Because you know that God made you that way. God put you there. God put you there. God withheld from you. Again, I don't care who you are. That's your story. Why aren't you married? God didn't let me do the mitzvah. Why aren't you 6 feet tall? God didn't let me dunk a basketball. Everyone's a Ger. And King David is the ultimate Ger. You want to talk about Ruth? That he comes from Ruth? You want to talk about that he comes from Miriam? Do you want to talk about that he comes spiritually from the upper world Atzilus? Do you want to talk about that he understood Torah Moshe? Do you want to talk about that he related to the proper Gerim? Do you want to talk about that what everybody else is denying their ger status. And they're saying, like the Ramban explained in Ekev, last week's Parsha, about love the ger, well, Hashem hooked me up. Yeah, every time I'm in trouble, Hashem's there for me. Thank God for me. All about me. As in, I have merit, do you? That's what circles do. Well, I have this merit, I have that merit. I come from this family, I have this job, I have this much security. As in, I have this X amount of other gods. How many other gods do you have? Because God forbid I should rely on the one true God. I have merit to protect me. Now, merit is not bad. But are you deifying your merit? David comes along and says, merit, shmerit. What merit are you referring to? I rely on the King of Kings, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, granted, David has merit coming from Jesse and Boaz and whatever. The point is his world, his mazel that he relates to, is only the ger. And that's everybody's mazel if you get to the bottom of it. You cannot change your mazel, even though you can't. Really, you can't. You literally would have to rewrite your spiritual DNA to change your mazel. David got to the bottom of it. He looked at his four-walled cell and said, yep, looks like a ger, smells like a ger, I'm a ger. And he saw everybody else's cell in the universe, and he said, yeah, we're all a bunch of gerim. Only they decorate their cell. This guy's got magazines up, this guy's got posters, and they're saying that instead of the cell itself, of embracing the cell, i.e. the ger, the domain of God, he calls it something else. This is my bachelor pad, this is my home. As in, you hear the connotation? A ger is a sojourner, a temporary dweller, a sukkah dweller, and this guy's calling it my home, my security pad. Right, you hear the connotation? I'm not going anywhere. I am entrenched. King David would say that's called the physicality that comes upon the commandments as opposed to the spiritual nature of the commandments. The holiday of Sukkot is that world of David, which is why David is called the kingdom of David is a fallen sukkah. When it's erected, it's just a sukkah. Whereas Solomon's attitude was the temple, but yes, the temple is not yours, it is God's permanent dwelling. Because God's permanent dwelling in our world means God really is a ger too. So David then says, I don't know what merit you all have. Is it not God that does it every time? Maybe you need God to put garments on God. So when God gives you a helping hand, He brings Uncle Lou. Uncle Louis comes over to help you. And you say, yeah, I'm related to Uncle Louis, it's pretty good. No, that's God helping you. You need to understand Uncle Louis, if it was up to Uncle Louis, he probably wouldn't be helping you. But God is the master of creation. So everywhere David looks, he's a ger. Imagine one day waking up in David's world. You're a Jew, you're a Jew, you're a Jew. Oh, it's so good. Everyone says it's great. It's only about us and we're good. And then he says, wait a minute. I come from Ruth. She was a ger. And I really don't have any merit other than God. Ger. God is a ger. Seichel is a ger. Everyone's a ger. Jacob was a ger. Abraham was a ger. Isaac was a ger. Mitzrayim was a ger. I came in the world from another world. I'm a ger. Spiritually, I'm a ger. Everywhere you turn. Imagine if that were to happen overnight. And ironically, that is what God wants. Not so-called overnight, but wake up. You may have been given the illusion of merit. And that merit may even be real through sanctification of 613. But the bottom line, are you going to recognize the true blueprint and DNA of the story of creation. You were born in this world with your name, and that's it. And you will die and go back and deliver your name before the King of Kings. And he will say, did you live up to your name? Not up to Uncle Lou's standards. Uncle Lou's not going to be there to testify for you. It's you yourself, your name before God. At this point, is it clear how David is in every sense of the way a ger? And how the verse itself is about the ger. And that everybody can understand David. Can I get a confirmation on the screen? Is that clear? So now, when you hear the verse, I'm a ger in the land, don't withhold from me your commandments. I'm assuming nothing has changed for you. You still understand to the full capacity that you told me 20 minutes ago. But now it should reach a little deeper and you feel, man, I really am and he really was too. Once we bring in the commentary, then it starts to get really the message into the terminology and ranks of the Torah. Before I get into the commentary, I just want to give Chaim's background on my little blurb of notes, before I forget, so I don't have it memorized on the page where it is. The Rambam brings that anybody and everybody can be a Levi. Now there is a tribe of Levi. And there are the spiritual Levi. Tribe of Levi is the tribe of Levi. He was dedicated to be a servant of God. And anybody that serves God in the same 100% capacity is a type of Levi, says the Rambam. Now there's a concept here. The ger is the commandment. You shall love the ger. But the light in that mitzvah is the entire light of everything. And the beautiful part is you're never going to find it. Right? If God doesn't help you, if God doesn't save the ger, good luck finding that light. Maybe it's emunah. Maybe it's making brachas. Maybe it's praying. Maybe it's believing in God. It could be anything. Maybe it's the land of Israel. Maybe it's Zion. Where do you draw the line of importance? Is not everything important? So how do I know really where the truth is? We know that God delivers Torah through mazal. He who real merit, if you want to talk about merit, merit is what Torah does God give you? And if you don't have any means, i.e. a negative merit, then God has to give you the Torah personally. That means you're a ger, that means you're a Levi. You rely on God. So the light is in the ger, God leads you there, and it can only be done with God. I.e. a prophetic power through the guise of mazal is the difference between the fulfillment of the Torah of Moses as opposed to a Beinoni lifestyle. I'm okay. I do what I can do. Either God does it for you and you let God do it for you. You make yourself a vessel for God to do it for you. Or you are God, you have other gods, and we know how that story goes. Your commandments are gashmi, they're physical. There's a garment on them. You have a religious lifestyle. which is fine. If you want to have religion, go for it. Only, how much of a barrier do you want between you and God? How much falsehood do you want to speak? Because there's a need to love the ger today, yet where is the love of the ger? There are needs that sometimes only the purity of the mitzvah can do. Let's say a ger needs to do an olah offering. Where is it done? The authentic opinions had no problems with it. And that's what this verse in Tehillim is all about. Sometimes, in our ger being, you just gotta do what you just gotta do. So just like the ger has the microcosm in the commandment, and then it blows up to the ultimate hidden light of creation, also the Levite. Yeah, there's a tribe of Levi. But then there's the huge Levi. Mashiach's a Levi. Ger's a Levi. Any servant of God's a Levi. Most commandments, if not all commandments, are just a level of malchus, a little blurb. Yeah, tribe of Levi. We got the lowly ger over here. But then there's the Levi, the ger. Everything is in its diminished status. The concept of a rabbi. Then the Zohar says there's the concept of the rabbi, which is a connotation of Mashiach. So the ger seems to be the entranceway where prophecy really is the equation. And the beginning of prophecy, a fear of heaven, is the beginning of all wisdom. And we know that Mazal is predicated on the fear of heaven. And wisdom is the beginning of prophecy, says Mazal. Then the beginning of the prophetic word of God, to be able to listen to the small, still voice that tells you what God wants in the guise of your voice as your connection to God. You must have the fear of God and be led to the ger. If all roads lead to Zion, your path leads ultimately to the ger. There was only a straight line the whole time. There was no left or right, and you were on a collision course with the ger. And it's the powers of prophecy, even in the form of wisdom, to let God pull you there and get there faster or more directly in perception than to entertain left and right. I.e., in the world of Malchus, of revelation, where everything just kind of is, everything also has that yesod, that level of light, that where all light is one. And guess what? When the light's not here, it is a ger. So I don't care which Malchus you have, which portal of light coming through, where the portal takes you to is ger land. We have this principle with Levi, and it also exists with Yehuda. It also exists with the tribe of Yehuda. How does it exist with Yehuda? The tribe of Judah was the kingly tribe, and the commentaries say only and strictly to get to David. The angel Matat, they say, is a lesser Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. Not to diminish God, God forbid, but to show how exalted this angel is. David is it. He is the Messiah. He is the ger. He is the king. He is the guy that really conquers the Torah of Moses. And he says he's a ger. And he is the most literal ger, as he represents in the spiritual world where the ger is coming from. So he is the archetype. The Gerim, then, what you can say, are the little Davids. The Chassidim of David. That's not to diminish the note. The ger is to show you how serious the ger is when David says he's a ger. A lot of people say, oh, David's cute. Yeah, it's funny. It's like, he's a ger. It's, oh, I'm humble before God. I'm a lowly ger. David would probably kill you if that was said. And he's the king. Because he has fear of God. The Torah says you're a ger. David therefore says he's a ger. If the Torah says jump, David says how high. And if you don't think the Torah is that real, at a Yirah Shamayim, fear of God level, how in the world are you going to do the will of God? God says, hey, you know what? I want you to go and do X, Y, Z. And you say, that's funny. It's kind of like Abraham doing Lech Lecha. Well, what if it is your Lech Lecha? And you're mocking God? I mean, you can mock God all you want. But you're going to be the guy that says, ger, I don't know what a ger is. Tell me what again, you have other gods. When you don't have any more other gods, and you're not connecting to the God Li, but you want God himself, God says you're a ger, you say, amen, so I am a ger. So the tribe of Judah is to get to this level of David. Why Judah? Judah, according to the commentaries, going back to Esav. And Esav's wife was called Yehudit. She was an idolater. Now, to use borrowed language and halachic terminology for the form of the Chassidus of the ger that we can all relate to, as a ger is called Chassidi Omos Ha'olam, the Chassidim of the world. The Torah of the ger is Chassidus. So let's speak it. Right? Using the terminology of the mitzvah, not the non-mitzvah. But the terminology of the mitzvah to understand and appreciate the essence of the Torah of Moshe. Esav's wife is called Yehudit. She's an idolater that has other gods. She comes to the conclusion that she is to have no other gods. Thereby, the terminology in those days, when you are a Baal Tshuva, and you no longer worship other gods, you are called a Yehudi. Now, how many terminologies of Jew or Yehudi are there? There's the tribe of Judah, we know that. We know Jews are called Jews, but did they teach you Jews are called Jews only from the time of Purim onwards? Because the tribe of Judah, after the exile of the 10 lost tribes, was the most numerous of people. But trace it back. Who was the tribe of Judah? Why was he called Judah? And Shem was the teacher of the day. And Esav's wife is called Yehudit, the female Judah. She becomes a Ger Tzedek. Now, she does this and has kids with Esav. Then they go back to idolatry. That's called apostate. The apostate is called a mumar, meaning the Yehudi status, the Ger status is revoked, and she goes back to having the status of Nachri, idolater. Then you have the sons of Isaac, the offspring of Esav, are really a type of Ger Toshav who have put themselves in a map of the classic Goy where they want to be called the Nachri. That was Esav's decision. Jews do it, Gerim do it, it's part of life. Anybody that becomes a follower of mitzvahs in the Torah, whether a Baal Tshuva, a Ger, a convert, whatever you want to be called, you take on the yoke of heaven, you may become an apostate. That's part of life. And they did. Lo and behold, the Torah is a real book of life. They become apostates. But what you have out of that is the nation of Esav really has the ability and potential to shine bright as Ger Toshav, even the Amalekite part. All the more so Yishmael, who received the circumcision and was a son of Abraham, the Ger Toshav. There are 3 parts of the world, Jacob, Ishmael, and Esav. This is why at Sinai, Jews are becoming under the wings of the Shekhinah by commanded in 613, becoming the Jewish nation, who have the mitzvah, the command, to be there teaching Torah, being a light to the nations, because one day, those apostates might want to repent. And the apostate is a condition, not from themselves naturally, but God places the ger, that's why he's called a ger, in a nation of apostasy, if that's a word. Maybe he places you as a Jew. Maybe he places you as a convert. Maybe he places you as an Arab. Who cares? You are a ger, he's a ger, we're all a ger. You're placed in the condition that was created in the Torah. Esau chose X, Ishmael chose Y, Jacob chose Z. And we all have our position. You are placed, the soul is placed in a condition. If you're a Jew in any time and space, and you meet up with a ger who comes out of idolatry, and he says, "Whew, I'm done with idolatry." Maybe he was an Ishmaelite, maybe he was an Esavite, maybe he was a Jew. Whatever he is, it's irrelevant. If you are a Jew and he is not a Jew, you have the obligation to be a light upon him. He made it through, and that's the revelation. Life is about Jews and Gerim. At Sinai, the Jews are the Jews. The rest of the world is the potential Ger Toshav. The technology changes. I don't care how you became to be part of the Esau Empire. Whatever it is or was. Now you are a Ger Toshav. Get on it. And in 2,000 years of Mashiach, which we're just now finishing up, I haven't seen Gerim in a long time. Have you? The Gerim might say, I haven't seen a temple in a long time. Have you? You're talking about how great it is. Where's your temple? Well, hey, are you any better? You're an idolater. But that's having other gods. That's not saying you're a ger, I'm a ger. Because when this guy comes out of idolatry, and the world is created, the Torah to be there for him when he does, and the Torah is telling you not only he's coming out of idolatry, he will come out of idolatry. That's what he was created to do. You may be a Judahite at Sinai. He's a Judahite, that he is a Bol Tshuva. You were created here, he was created there. It's the idea of angelic Kruvim. One's on this side of the universe, one's on the other. One's called Matat, one is called Sandal, and they are brothers. You can call it the Enoch, Eliyahu, Elijah, Pinchas program. Your job is to stand here with the open book teaching Torah, light to the nations, for when they come out, they have one need. They say, hey, can you shine some light on me and teach me some Torah? It is not the Jewish job to say, let me tell you what I think you should be doing. I think you should not be doing commandments. Who are you? He tells you what he needs. Your job is to be a light to him. And that is the Judah program. Judah is the Bol Tshuva. He had other gods, and now he finishes God's program of Judah that says, okay, got it. Lowest common denominator, you shall have no other gods. Tell me, why are there other gods in this world? Where is the light? Please, Rabbi, please remove from me the other gods in my sight. I just got done with the program. I really don't want to go back to Egypt. Maybe you do. Because if you have other gods, doesn't God say, I brought you out of Egypt where you had other gods, I am Hashem your God? Thus the relationship must work. So Judah is part of that micro-macro. There's the tribe of Judah, but there's the really big other picture. The big program of Judah. The Bol Tshuva / the Jew and the Yehuda, the big picture. And the bigger picture on that, where two really are one, let's call that the David, the Judah program. The Dalet in Yud-Kei Vav-Kei stands for David. Judah, Yehuda. To acknowledge God. And that's what this is about. That's what it's about. David says very clearly, As David's job is to really make himself pashut, make himself devoid of foreign substance, to be a vessel, to have no dependency on anything but God, to not expect anything but God. Don't be chametz, which is the yeast, the leaven. Be matzah, the same letters, but the chet becomes a hey. Just like the word Mashiach, the chet can become a hey. And the yud of Mashiach is the leg of the hey. Spells Moshe. Mashiach and Moshe really are synonymous. That's called the Torah. Torat Moshe. The prophecy of Mashiach through Moshe. David's job then is to connect to God, have nothing else but God, and look into the Torah on a prophetic wisdom, seichel, intellect level, and derive what does God want me to do. Letting the mind wander with God. Seichel choshit. Free mind. Free your mind. Either in the inner realm of Shabbat, the realm of the Mashiach program, where David is a part of, since he died on Shabbat, or on the Shema, let it be heard. Let your mind go. David's mind was for God. And you cannot encapsulate or trap the mind of David. If you see David in a dream, you can expect chassidut, that Torah that comes from the essential level. But David here takes it on a whole different level. It becomes the service of God. Moses understood the prophecy, the Mashiach, but how do you use the tool? Mashiach is a craftsman, and Moses' name is not listed amongst the craftsmen. Moses is the guy that made the hammer. He wrote the Torah. He mastered the Torah. David says, let me use that hammer. Let me use the Torah to serve God. And that's why he's a ger. He understands the command, the mission statement, the command, the prime directive. He understands the commandments. And he doesn't want the veil of a religion to always try to get close to God. David is one with God. He's connected to God. God is with him. Therefore, he wants to be in action, serving God. And it's not something to aspire to. He's doing it. And that's what the mitzvahs are, which the gerim need to know. They are there for you to serve God. 7 commandments exist for the construct of society. There's no society without 7 laws, particularly the Beis Din. Once you have your 7, okay, done, society's set up. I don't have to sleep at night thinking you're going to kill me. That's the way the world works. You might kill me. 7 laws sets it up and says, okay, I can sleep at night. And by the way, David will say, if you can sleep at night, that's 99% of the battle. If you don't sleep at night, we're the laborers labor in vain. So I'm sleeping okay. I'm sleeping pretty good. And now, let's go back into the commentary and really make sense of this. I am a ger in the land. The land is Israel. David is the ger, seichel of Torah, the ger. Meaning, he has Torah in the land. That's called the voice of the turtle dove is heard in our land. Kol Torah nishma b'artzeinu. The land is the crown of the king. Don't hide your commandments from me. In the land you are to do people, times, and missions. He's the person. He's got the mission. He's saying, isn't it the time, God? Since that I am like a ger in the land. Now listen to that sensitivity. Since I'm just like a ger in the land, are you comparing the ger to David? Or is David comparing himself to the Ger? Meaning, forget David. Forget it. As a bonus, he's saying the Ger already set the precedent. I'm just another type of Ger. So let's change this from David for the time being, okay? And think of this only as the Ger. Because that's what he's saying. I'm just like a Ger in the land. Oh, so tell me about this Ger that you speak of. Well, the Ger, he would say, my soul, on the godly soul, the intellect, the seichel, it's not a dweller in this world of materialism. And since it dwells in another world, which is the world to come, Bria. Meaning when the Rambam says that non-Jew has a share in the world to come, that's also not a cute, silly statement. That's where the Gerim come from. The world to come. No eye has seen it. Because he can't talk about it until he learns Torah. By the time he learns Torah, that's when you'll say, hey, Boker Tov, Mashiach came. And like a Ger amongst the powers of physicality that are dwellers in this world, they grab on to the seichel. So when a ship has all the mollusks on the ship, you seen that image? All the gross sea creatures that latch on. Right? Can you attest to this? A ship that has all the algae and seaweed and mollusks. Right? So that's what people are in this world. And let's say their service is through that. That's called klippa. The Ger says, man, why do you got all that stuff on you? Can't you just be a ship in water? Can't you just go to God? Do you have to do a song and dance to get to God? Can't you just get to God? And my soul doesn't have the power to conceptualize matters of the godly or godlike. I can't deal with being like God. I want God, or let's call it the medium to God. I can't deal with the medium to God. I don't want to go to some medium person thing, service, warm-up act, and never get the real thing. I don't want McDonald's. I want a good superfood meal. And I deserve one. I don't accept McDonald's. Maybe your body can handle it. Maybe you have the metabolism and the amino acids, whatever it is that can digest fake meat and fake milkshakes, fake fries. I can't. I'm a different species than you. It's like a dog can't eat regular food. They eat grass. Or, animals eat raw vegetation. And other people need cooked food. That's the difference here. I can't digest what you're eating. I physically don't have the power. And it's this physicality that's holding me back. I just can't eat raw grass. Therefore, I request, don't hide from me your commandments, that there shouldn't be retribution and payback for the fact that I want to endure your commandments. King David is saying this is the Ger. He has the level of what's called seichel as a Ger in this world. He belongs in the world of Bria. David is here saying he's the ultimate Ger. He's Malchus of Atzilus, the level of the Ger Tzedek, literally. I'm not in your world. You guys are trying to get to God. I'm with God. Let me be with God. I'm trying to redeem the Ger, he says. I'm trying to love the Ger because the Ger represents the light. And you're saying, no, we don't have anything to do with Gerim. This is how we do it. You're probably not even Jewish. You're a Munzer. I mean, that he's totally vulnerable for attack. And he wants to connect to God. The mitzvahs are the connection, the service. Now here's how it works for a Ger, and we'll end with this. The Ger has a map that goes back to Esav. He's a Nachri, but not really. He's a Ger Tzedek who acts like a Nachri. So the Babylonians bring down the temple. We say, oh, you bad Babylonian, you're a donkey. You brought down Solomon's temple. And he says, oh man, I am a donkey. Why did I bring down God's temple? That's called guilt, and we all feel it. And it's the exaggeration of the animal soul. It's very easy to blame. But what the task is now, he's pushed into idolatry. That was a nudge from God. And he wakes up one day and he says, man, I'm not a donkey. I don't believe in this idolatry. I don't know what's true yet, but there's something going on. So right now, David's language would say, I am a Ger Tzedek of the world of Atzilus. I am Malchus of the Hay of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. I am one level above the 8 kings. He's talking hyper-technical Torah, Moshe, Kabbalah. He has the lingo, and he knows what's going on. He's King David, for crying out loud. The Messiah. The Gerim of the little David. The Hasidim of David. So that's the world of Bria. Bria has evil in it, whereas Atzilus doesn't. Point being, there's a flavor to Bria. That's why the world to come is there. It's level of yesh, as opposed to ain. Something other than nothing. It's human. It's real. It's personal. It's life. Atzilus is the DNA of life. It's the blueprint that you can look at for the textual schematic. But it's not where you go to on-game training. So the Ger wakes up and he says, I don't believe in this shtusim. But he doesn't know what he's saying. He doesn't have the Atzilus. He's a Ger. So he's waking up. He's waking up. He's no longer an Akum. He's a Nachri. He's no longer a Nachri. He realizes no other gods. He's left the church. He says, you know what? Man, this is making sense. I think I'm a Ger Toshav. Once he gets there, he is a Ger, and he says like this. Remember, he doesn't have the Hebrew and the yeshiva and the upbringing, and neither did David really, meaning you don't have the merit of the Welt. You have the merit of being you, the merit of the Torah that came to you, your life, your experiences that allow you to understand. And instead of saying, Shenafshi ha'sichlis eino mitoshavi ha'olam hazeh chomri, you would say, you know what? And I feel different. And I like to think. My mind, I can't think in this life of mine. And I don't feel like I'm from around, everyone it sounds strange around me. I just don't feel like I'm from here. I feel like I need another place to go to. And everyone's clinging on to fake stuff. And it's also natural for them. And they congregate on junk. And I can't grasp onto it, I don't get into this stuff. In fact, it repels me and holds me back. So I just kind of I finally had it out with God. I said, God, can't you just let me do things for you? So that would be a dialogue of a real person talking to God in his own language, being connected. And when that gets elevated, Ger Toshav, then he's a righteous Ger, and you'll say, what do you call a righteous Ger? I call him a Ger Tzedek. Why? Because that's what the Torah calls him, and we can get halachic and go right back to that godly, like God, the physical separation, and that's fine. And we'll say, you don't have the right to be a Ger anything. We don't do it, you don't need it. But maybe you do need it. Maybe David did need it. And maybe the Ger Toshav simply needs a commandment on top of 7 to say, you know what? I need this to serve God. And frankly, schnitzel doesn't cut it. I don't really want to go back into other gods. I really don't. And I don't want to join a congregation where other gods is the norm. I don't. It's not right. And frankly, I have needs that require me going to God. And so you know what I need? I'm talking to my head. I need to pray. So I pray. I do 7 laws of Noah. I pray. Maybe I give tzedakah. Maybe I do what I need to do. Maybe that's just what King David's saying. Maybe I do what I need to do to serve God. David stood against the world. And God was the only one in his corner. And in the end, David said, I'm going to God. I'm sorry to tell you. I'm doing what I have to do to get to God. That happened to have earned David the Messiah. And there's a legacy. He who sees David in a dream can expect Chassidus. The Chassidus is given to the Ger, and David says he's a Ger, and it's not cute and funny. At the end of the day, the Ger has to take on 119:19 to say, just like everyone said, I understand it when I mean I'm a Ger in the land, don't hold back from your commandments. You understood it an hour ago. I'm guessing you understand it better now. And I'm also guessing the more you relate to yourself and listen to your inner voice and hear when you can finally shed the map, when you can finally say, what donkey? It's the animal soul. And I'm not that. I am the soul of the Seichel. I'm the soul from the Olam Haba. I'm the soul that saw it. And I want it out. I want the Chassidus out. I want the light to come in. The only way to do that is to do all those other mitzvahs like the Ger, meaning to find what you need to serve God. The Levite serves God. Once that comes, you'll find the Ger just might have an appointment and destination with the light of a Jew. That's called loving the Ger and a mitzvah l'chiyusa. Then you'll find two Jews will get together. Then they'll be like-minded. Instead of 20 opinions, you have one opinion, one light. Once this fractal is iterated, you might just call that David's vision complete, which he came in the first lifetime to pray for. And in the final version, in the Bishagam program of Moses, Bereshi Shem, the Ger and the Mashiach join as Mashiach ben David is to come with the final Redeemer, Moshe Rabbeinu, Mashiach ben Menashe, and the great secret of the Zohar, Moshe betraying Mashiach. Moses and the Messiahs, David and Joseph. Joseph being that of Moses coming in the land, David being he who uses the Torah of Moses to serve God. And let that be the first level in the repair of everything with the Ger, using the Torah to serve God. That's all for this week. Thank you very much. I'm Rabbi David Katz. Hope to see you guys on Shabbos. See you.